Okay, in this lesson, we're going to take a look at everyone's least favorite part about borrowing money, and that's paying back those loans. So, a few things I did want to point out, and that's that when you invest money, of course, you earn interest on your investment, so you get back more than what you put in. Unfortunately, the same thing usually works when you're borrowing money. So, when you borrow money, you have to put back more than you borrowed. So if you borrow $1,000, you could end up paying back 1,100, 1,500, or even over $2,000, depending on how long you borrow the money for and how high the interest rate is wherever you decide to borrow the money from. Um, it's usually a good idea to try and pay back loans as quickly as possible, and it is worth the time to search out loans that have lower interest rates, obviously. So what we're going to do is rather than solve equations, which are much like the annuity equations from last unit, they're actually slightly different. We're going to use online calculators for this particular lesson because we don't need to kind of learn the math again. And realistically, most people who are doing loans will use online calculators down the road anyway. So in the lesson, you'll notice that there is an online calculator linked there. So you can just click on it and open up that. Now, I will point out that there are lots of them out there. This is just one example of one that you could choose to use. So if we open up that one there, it's going to look a little bit like this one. So we've got a few things that we have to put in: loan amount, interest rate, how long we're going to borrow the money for. Now, the loan start date, we're not going to worry about. We're just going to assume it's today, which actually I believe this is today. But the actual dates exactly for the loan don't matter. It's just basically how long we're going to have them for. And then it gives us a few other options like do we have sort of any extra fees? Are we going to pay a big bonus at the end? So instead of paying back like 150 a month, maybe we pay 100 a month and then 1,000 at the end type thing. Or are we going to have some sort of additional money that we put back kind of almost immediately? Those aren't really part of what we're doing, so we're not going to worry about any of those optional things. We're just going to do the top stuff. And if we flip back to the first question, I'm going to do question 1A with you, and then after that, I think you'll be capable of finishing off the rest of this on your own without too much trouble. So for the first one, we want to borrow $2,000 at 8% interest rate per year, and we're going to repay that over 2 years. Now we're going to be making monthly payments, and we're going to assume that it's compounded monthly. Um, that isn't necessarily the case. And depending on the calculator you're using, it may or may not make the right assumption. We're not going to worry about that. We're just going to use the calculator and see what it says. And we want to figure out what our monthly payment would be. So instead of depositing money into an investment every month for a few years, in this case, we're going to be paying back the investment over 2 years. Now, just to kind of get a feel for this, if we pretended there was no interest at all, zero interest, and we had to pay back $2,000 with monthly payments over 2 years, well, $2,000 over 2 years would be $1,000 per year. And then if I divide that by 12 months, I would expect to pay back about $83 a month. So no interest, we'd expect to pay about $83 a month, and this calculator will tell us how much we should pay back with interest. Now, the interest rate, 8%, is not particularly high. It's not low, but it's not record high. And 2 years is pretty quick to repay it back. So I'm expecting an answer that's probably a little bit above $83, maybe $85, maybe $90, maybe even $100, but just in that ballpark so that we kind of know what we're expecting. So let's flip over to the online calculator and plug in the things that we know. By default, it is set in dollars, but if for some reason you wanted to convert to euros or pounds or yen or I don't know what that symbol is, but whatever that symbol is, but we're going to just do it in dollars. And we're going to do $2,000. The annual interest rate is 8%. Notice the percent is already there. We don't have to type in the percent sign or convert it to a decimal. And we're doing it for 2 years, and we won't put any months in because we're just doing it even 2 years. Ignore the loan start date because it doesn't matter. And then we're just going to click calculate down here at the bottom. And when we do that, uh, it's going to bring up a bunch of information, including a whole bunch of ads. Let me just get rid of some of those if I can. And it tells me that my monthly payment is $90.45. So when we predicted that it was going to be a little bit over 83, that sounds about right. Now, the nice thing is this actually does give us more information as well. It tells us that the total interest is $170.91. So if we were trying to figure out how much we did, told us there were 24 payments, although we kind of knew that already. The total amount to be repaid is obviously the 2,000 we borrowed plus the 170.91 interest. The payoff date is dependent on the date you borrow. And it may not be exactly 2 years from now. It sometimes depends on what day of the week it is because anyway, it doesn't matter. We're not going to worry about that part. And now it gives the effective annual rate. So we're not going to worry too much about this, but this is essentially the interest rate if it was compounded annually instead of compounded the way it is, which is monthly. So don't worry about those bottom two. Really, the only one that we care about big time is the monthly payment, but you might be interested in looking how much total interest you're paying, especially if you're doing this for a real loan. You're actually looking at borrowing money. You might want to know how much you're going to pay back. Okay, so that's about it for using the personal loan calculator. I'll let you go back and you'll notice that for 1A, I have filled in the blank with $90.45. You can continue on for B, C, and D and try those and make sure that your answers seem reasonable. Again, looking at the numbers, you can probably estimate what the payments should be without interest, and it should give you at least an idea of whether you're in the ballpark or not. For question 2, it looks like I'm giving you new math. There's no real formulas or equations for this. It's just common sense. So you're going to figure out, for instance, the monthly payments, the number of payments, the total repaid, and the total interest paid. If you work through that, I think you'll find that it's not too tricky. And then for part 3, it asks you to determine how important the interest rate is in your amount that you have to pay back, essentially. And hopefully you'll kind of get a feel for how important that is. And then again, there are some practice problems. Now these ones here, um, by all means, feel free to use the calculator, the online calculator. We don't have to use all of our annuity equations, compound interest equations, unless it says otherwise. But if we're trying to figure out how much we're paying back loans, we can use that. And as it has been for a while, we have approximate answers at the end to let you know if you're on the right track. If you're having difficulty, if you need help, call me over and I will be happy to help you. Otherwise, good luck.